Welcome into episode 179 of the Pegasus Podcast. I am Christian Simmons, who does not normally do the intro, and I am not joined by Bailey Adams, but I am joined by Brian Peterson. Welcome, Brian.
Christian, thanks for having me. I'm glad to fill in when Bailey couldn't be here.
I feel like you might be an upgrade. So former student body president, contributing writer to the Sons of UCF. We'd said on our past podcast how I was just going to do another solo pod, which I think I've said on air I hate doing. It may be surprising given how much I talk, but I actually don't like just talking to myself for 30 straight minutes. So we went and found a Bailey replacement. So welcome to the show, Brian. I'm excited to have you here.
I don't know if I believe you for a second that you don't like talking to yourself.
Well, I do when I'm just like walking around my home, but it's like when I'm allowing my stream of consciousness just like out into the world, it's a little more stressful, especially because like I always think when Bailey and I do a show, like after it ends, we always have the exact same conversation. I click the end button and we both look at each other and I'm like, that was a good pod. And he's like, yeah, it was pretty good. And, or maybe we're like, that sucked. And we're really unhappy with this. But when it's just me, I'm like, I have no idea if that was good or not. I'm just sending it out into the world and hoping it was not terrible. So this is way better.
I would pay good money to hear the inner monologue running through Christian's head on a regular basis. There's some gold in there somewhere.
You think I'm joking? It's literally just uniforms, like all the time. In just
there's nothing wrong with that.
It's just nothing but uniforms. But okay, UCF is actually, after a freaking 5-game losing streak in the middle of the season, they clinched bowl eligibility with a win over Houston. They won 27-13. It was also not like, I don't know. I had hoped that they were going to win this game pretty easily, and I'm not going to say that it was not competitive the whole way, because it absolutely was, but it felt like UCF was in control for most of the game.
I would say that this game was really a tale of two halves. It felt like the first half was, we were on the brink of, is this going to be I don't want to call it a shootout, but are we going to come down, to the final minutes? Houston's really giving it to us. We didn't really seem to have an answer on defense of slowing them down. We had a lot of penalties that just seemed to come at the wrong time. The refs were being questionable again. And that first half really felt like, okay, this is going to be a long afternoon. In the second half of the game, we seemed like we were able to move the ball with ease. The defense really started to step it up, and it felt much more comfortable. I will say that the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, I still had the jitters. There was a potential for them to get into the end zone, potentially get an onside kick, and you just never know. This has been a season of you never know.
And especially with this defense. And because they had that moment where UCF killed like 7 minutes of clock on their second to last offensive drive, but then Houston gets the ball back. It was the final score. It was 27-13. And I even tweeted, I was like, pretty much over, like, go Knights, charge on. And then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking more, and I'm like, if Houston finds a way to score really quickly here, like on a big play, it is 27-20. And then I had the same thing too, where you even replied to my tweet. I'm like, oh, maybe I am getting palpitations now. Maybe this isn't good. But this was one of my biggest takeaways from this game, and honestly the last few games, was the first drive for Houston. Houston pretty much blitzes down the field. They score, and I'm like, this, and they're running the ball, which is not something they do well. And I'm just like, this defense, man, it just can't hang. We're in for the same problems we've had all year. Defense was good for pretty much the rest of the day. They had huge plays. I don't know what to make of the defensive switch, but I pulled up the stat that I think they're allowing 16.5 points per game in their last 4 games. I don't know what happened. I have no earthly idea what happened to the defense, but today was a very good day for them.
It was. Malachi Lawrence was in the backfield. John Walker was all over the place. Those two guys really jumped out at me as being superstars for this game. Like I said, that first drive, and I don't know if it was because it's one of those scripted drives that Houston comes out ready to throw at UCF. But other than that first drive, it really felt like the defense started to pick up and started to click, and they were able to get stops when we needed them, barring any crazy penalties or conferencing from the refs today that just seemed to be throwing flags like crazy. But I
try to not because I know that like a lot of UCF Twitter is always like, the refs hate us. And I try to avoid the ref stuff mainly because I'm just like, it balances out over the course of a game, over the course of a season. And I also know there are some fans who it's like anything happens to UCF and it's like the refs. But like today there was some stuff. Today there was some stuff. I think the one that stood out to me was the Lee Hunter, where Houston's quarterback straight up flopped. Like he just got tapped at the end of a play and went flying through the air. And I literally was like starting to say in the press box, I was like, oh, a nice flop there. And then the flag's coming out and I'm just like, oh my God.
I watched the game from home. I had family obligations, so I couldn't make it to Orlando for the game. So of course I watched it on the couch, and I have the Mark Daniels broadcast queued up so that I don't have to listen to the the Fox Sports 1 broadcast. And so
why not? They've been so good all year.
They've really just been excellent. So I had the game on. I watched the play happen on TV, and the play was over. Okay, great play by John Walker. And all of a sudden the flag comes out, and Mark Daniels is literally beside himself, calling what could they possibly be throwing a flag for? And then they say targeting. And it was that collective, like, are you serious? There's no way. When you watch the replay back, yeah, you could see that when he makes the tackle, he kind of pushes him backwards, and his head is kind of forward a little bit, but I don't know. It was a stretch to try and call that targeting.
Yeah, it's Big 12 refs. We were warned about it for 2 years going in by the other fan bases, but I'm trying to figure out how, and maybe you can even tell me better because I've barely been on Twitter since the game ended, but to me, in my book, this was the goal for this season, was make a bowl game, get to 6 wins. I think all offseason we spent saying 6-5 or 7-5. And I hope that fans understand what an accomplishment this is. Like, I'm good with this result. Are there things I would change? Yes. I'm going to be talking about the Baylor game for the rest of my life, and I'm never going to get over that. But they did it. They're going bowling, and we're going to find out where in the next few days. And I'm very excited. But I hope that the fan base is generally understanding of like, hey, goal was accomplished for year 1. I hope there isn't anyone who's like, where's our Big 12 championship appearance coming or anything like that.
Well, there's definitely 2 sides of that coin, right? There's a lot of us, myself included, who said, 6-6 or 7-5 is very attainable, and that should be the goal, is, to be bowl eligible in our first year. And then there was the other side of the coin, which is, and maybe that was, a lot of people buying into Gus's, preseason hype that we're gonna compete, and maybe we'll be 9-3 at the end of the season. It was probably never going to happen, as we see now. Depth just wasn't on our side. We didn't have the guys to pull a 9-3 or a 10-2 type season that some people thought. But yeah, I think you and Bailey have been saying it all season long, that 6-6 and making a bowl and being the best of the newcomers, and assuming that BYU doesn't win their game against Oklahoma State tonight, will be the only of the 4 new teams going bowling, which is fantastic.
And that's the first off, thank you for just validating all my opinions. That's really why we brought you on, to just sit here and be like, Bailey and Christian never wrong.
I did my job.
Yeah, thanks. You can go now, and I'll just sit here and ramble to myself for a few minutes. But no, to me, that was always the factor. Because listen, my opinions on that might have changed if we got to this point in the season, and like, this would never been possible. But like, BYU's 9-3 and Houston's 8-4, and since he's competitive, then I might be saying, okay, something went wrong here. But first off, we already had the sample size of TCU and Utah way back in the day. They both went 7-5 when they made the jump. Cincinnati is horrible this year. They won 1 game in the Big 12. Houston, Holgerson might get fired. Joseph Duarte at the Houston Chronicles reporting they have a meeting with him tomorrow, which usually when you like have an unexpected meeting with your coach the day after he finishes 4-8, it's not to be like, great job, here's a contract extension. So I'd be a little worried if I were him. And then BYU started 5-2 and is now probably going to miss a bowl. So it's hard for me to justify people being pissed about the way the season turned out when they literally are the only one of those new 4 who are going to a bowl pending BYU, and the only one who was even the other thing is the only one who was even competitive. I mean, the other 4 were getting blown out basically week in and week out. And UCF really just had one horrific result against Kansas, and the rest of the way they were competitive.
A couple of plays could go differently in any number of games, and we could have still potentially been in the talk to perhaps, find ourselves as a dark horse in the championship game. So I don't think there's any argument that of the 4 newcomers this year that UCF has had the best hand.
Yeah, I think UCF might actually be, depending on how the rest of today goes. So, like, apologies if you're listening to this on Sunday and I was just grossly wrong. I think they're going to finish 9th in the Big 12, which for year 1, I'm cool with. I'm totally cool with that.
Considering we had a 5-game slide, I will absolutely take that.
They lost 6 games and they did 5 of them.
6 games.
But just the fact they did 5 at once, right? Like 6-6, but we just did 5 in a group. I don't know how it happened, but I was going to say I love that they lost 5. I really didn't love that part, but I love they were able to recover from it. But
you're never going to recover on Twitter after saying that. Quotes.
Oh, dear God. No, I did not. I personally love the 5-game losing streak. It built character, it built grit, and it set them up for this 3-1 finish. But I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, so many players had great days today. I don't even know if we can cover them all. JRP was accurate as hell. Only 4 incompletions the entire day. 23 of 27, 253 yards and a touchdown. Kobe Hudson had a career-high 9 catches for 98 yards. Javon had 2 catches for 59. Xavier Townsend had a touchdown where he juked out like half of Houston's
That was an amazing play. That was an amazing play.
Good Lord. Yeah. I'm going to miss him next year when he's on some other team and he's transferred, but I really a big fan of Xavier Townsend.
Yeah, don't be surprised if that happens.
I really am not going to be surprised if it happens, but we're going to hope it doesn't. But Defense, I mean, you mentioned Malachi Lawrence. Corey Thornton had a big pick. Who stood out to you the most? Pick your like MVP for this game.
Ooh, well, I mean, the easy one is obviously RJ Harvey. He had a
Mm-hmm.
big game. He's I mean, he's probably the first running back that we've had since 2013 Storm Johnson who's just really carried the load for the offense. I mean, even our good seasons of 17 and 18 and the past few years we've had, running back by committee, whereas RJ Harvey's pretty much been our go-to guy all season long. So, I mean, I'll give the game ball to him if you put me on the spot.
Unlike us, who would give the game ball to Alexander Cartwright, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, RJ Harvey, 136 carries, or 136
That's
carries.
a lot of carries in one
it's
game.
Like Kevin Smith is on the team.
Yeah.
136 yards and 2 touchdowns on 21 carries. So if you're listening to this, you'll know that Bailey and we've somehow been in between podcasts while this whole Kingdom thing is blown up on Twitter. So I haven't touched on that at all. And we'll get into that in our next podcast. I'm not doing it right now because I just don't have the mental capacity to do so. But I will say, as far as the Kingdom and just UCF's NIL capacity in general, whether or not RJ Harvey is still here next year, I feel like is the biggest test of that, because he can come back next year. He was asked about it in postgame today and obviously wasn't going to give a real answer, but he gave the typical, I'll talk with my family about what I want to do. He was asked directly, is NFL a possibility? He said yes. So you have two goals if you're UCF in the Kingdom. It's one, fend off other schools who are going to come in and offer him money, which we know will happen because it happened last offseason.
Yep.
And also convince him that you can pay him more than he'll get as a UDFA in the NFL, which I think is still what he's looking at. I don't think he's draft expert Bailey isn't here, but I don't think he's a draftable player right now. So that's a huge test. But we talked about the fun stuff. Let's talk about one player who did not have the best day, and that would be UCF's current kicker, Colton Boomer. How'd Colton Boomer do today, in your opinion?
He's had a rough stretch here as of late. What is it? He missed two. Was it just the one PAT and the one field goal?
Yes. So today he missed 2 field goals and a PAT.
2 field goals and the PAT.
And against Texas Tech, he missed a field goal and a PAT. I think I have that all right.
We're getting to the point where they're all starting to blur together. There's been so many of them. Boomer's a great guy. He's a great competitor. He's a great player. Love Boomer to death. He's got a case of confidence issues right now, I think. He's obviously earned, I think, a lot of respect from myself and the fan base. He saved our bowl season in that he was the one that kicked that field goal that won us at Boise State, right? So can't take anything away from him. But it certainly brings into question what's going on in his mind right now. That second kick right after he got iced by Houston, I mean, it looked like he kicked it into the line.
Yeah.
I
gotta say, because because people naturally on Twitter start fighting, and I saw some people were like, oh, well, it was blocked, so that's not on him. I'm like, no, that wasn't blocked. He kicked it into the line. It
was low kick.
It sucks because now you probably know if you're listening that my hot take in the offseason was I've been saying for like a year and a half that Colton Boomer is artificially good. I said that I felt like he was sort of flukily good last year because he had some kicks that went in but were bad. I think like the 25-yarder that he doinked in against Cincinnati. I was thrilled to be wrong. And I'm not sitting here now and doing a victory lap of, it turns out he was great for a whole season, but now he's been bad for one game. So I was correct. He's clearly a very good kicker, but it's just, this happens. We've seen this happen with kickers where especially, and that's why I was worried with Boomer since he's been so good for so long, is that one or two things go wrong and just kind of spirals. And this is clearly a mental thing and not a talent thing to me, because he's missing PATs. There's nothing to a PAT. I mean, every field goal kicker in the country can hit those. So the fact that he's not implies, I don't know. I'm worried. And I liked Gus's answer in postgame, because I'll say it. If I'm the coaching staff, I would have moved on from him after this game. I don't know if I'm making a change in game. I probably would have just said, we're not kicking any more field goals the rest of the way. We're just always going for it. But I would be ready to make a change. And Gus said they're not doing that. He said they talked about it and they decided not to. And the other factor, if you don't know, is their backup kicker is Grant Reddick, who was the number 1 kicker prospect in the country last cycle and is a true freshman. So it's not going to have options. But Gus is sticking with him. All right, where do you stand on that? Give Boomer another shot here in the bowl, or is it time to move on?
That's pretty much Gus's MO, right? Is he's going to stick with his guy, right? He's got that loyalty clause in his contract that he signed with UCF that, once he picks a player, he has to stick with them for the rest of the season, right? So I was not surprised. I threw a tweet out halfway through the game after some of the Boomer misses, and I said, we're really going to learn a lot about Gus, and is he going to trot Boomer back out there, or is he going to try and, change things up and just try and give Boomer, some time to watch from the sideline and, kind of calm his thoughts. But no, he sent Boomer back out there, and that's pretty much Gus's MO. So I'm not surprised at all.
I just don't know where I stand on it. I don't know, because Boomer has the talent, so I don't think this is a situation of, it's not like he can't play or something, or wow, he's just not good, like where they were with Obarski. But UCF's also in the kind of unique position where we know that they probably have another very good option at kicker. So it's not like there's no one else to turn to. And I don't know. I kind of feel like you stick with Boomer for the bowl, because it's kind of like, what's the point at this stage in the season in making that change? But I feel like it makes next year interesting. I mean, are we in for a kicking competition in spring now? It feels like they kind of have to.
I mean, it's tough to know because we don't know, we're not in those practices. We don't see what these guys are doing or how they look. Maybe maybe this is a situation where Reddick just doesn't kick as well during practices, and that kind of translates over to him not getting the start. It's really tough to say. I mean, kicking is you're either on or you're off, right? You're either a good kicker or you're not. And we've had good kickers and we've had bad kickers without throwing any names out there. We've been on both sides of the spectrum. So
I'll throw the name out there. Daniel Obarski. It was a rough era, which it's one of those things where you don't hold anything against them, but man,
there were some people calling for Obarski on Twitter
today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was in jest, but it was like,
I don't care if it was in jest or not. You're invoking that name during this game. I don't know about that, guy. I saw someone replied to me. I tweeted about Boomer, and someone replied to me with a photo of Quadri Jones, which I feel like is like the deepest of inside jokes for UCF fans at this point. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. I don't know. I don't totally know what the answer is. I'm kind of the opinion it's a bowl game. Just put him back out there. Let's see what happens. You'll deal with it.
Hopefully we're scoring enough touchdowns. We don't have to worry about him making a 45-yard field goal
as UCF's up 56-3 on USF in a bowl game.
It's very possible. They have to win their game. They're not yet bowl eligible. They play Charlotte, I believe, this afternoon, in their UCF trademarked pewter uniforms with the script bulls on the helmets that they announced this week. So I would assume they will be bowl eligible. Crazier things have happened. I think Charlotte is a 4-win team, so they're effectively not playing for a bowl. They're just playing spoiler potentially for the Cows. I know you would love us to play the Bulls in a bowl game. I am staunchly opposed to playing the Bulls in a bowl game. And here's my crazy thought. If we play USF, it would probably be in the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa. So one, they would have, I guess you would say, home field advantage. We know huge home field don't really turn out. They could for this game, right? It's the first time they're going to go bowling in a long time if they do. And I'll remind you how it went the last time UCF played in a bowl game in Tampa against a 6-6 Power 5 team from Florida. It didn't turn out so well for the Power 5 team. So not to put that into the universe, but I would not want us to play the Cows with a chance for them to walk away with a victory.
Well, first off, this is so refreshing because Bailey and I just agree on everything. So it's just a lot of like, hell yeah, sounds good. And then we move on. But part of it for me is just a personal thing of there were like, I'm going to put in quote unquote rumors, even though it was true. And we know it's true that Florida tried very hard to get out of playing UCF in the Gasparilla Bowl in 2021. It's no surprise, obviously. And I made so much fun of them for that mentality. I can't possibly turn around now and be like, yeah, UCF shouldn't play that. Like I have to commit, like I'm all in on it. But I honestly, I feel like it's kind of an age divide because I've seen a lot of like the younger fans on Twitter where I don't know. It feels like, is it fair to say the younger part of the fan base doesn't really care about USF as much as the older part? Is it maybe just because USF's never been good since they've been fans, has played a role in that?
They haven't been good, but they always play us tough.
Yeah, it's always a good game.
It's not like we're blowing them out.
I mean, look at the crowd today. UCF's Black Friday games are always, with USF, are always sold out games, and today was not. But I don't know. To me, it's just college football is supposed to be fun, and I miss that rivalry. And I couldn't say that on Twitter this week. I would not tweet that because I know I would have gotten hammered. But like all week, I'm just like, I miss USF. Like they're so fun to beat. And I know I was gonna get node like it's great that UCF won a game, but I'm not like, yeah, like let's go find a Houston account to make fun of. There's like 3 of them, and they don't talk anyway. I mean, it's just not the same.
I have the same dilemma over the fact that when we were the team that was behind South Florida and South Florida didn't want to play us anymore. And, they said, oh, we're on to bigger and better things and you don't deserve to play us. And now that the shoe's kind of on the other foot, I do feel like there's they can always pull that out and say, oh, well, you said that when we didn't want to play you guys that we were avoiding you guys, and now the foot, the shoe's on the other foot. So I can see the argument to be made either way, but I'd rather play somebody else. I don't see us playing a Power 5 opponent anyway.
It's going to be this is one of those things where, because it's going to be a weird year for bowl selections, because there aren't going to be, as of right now, it sounds like there aren't going to be enough bowl eligible teams. And the Big 12 is already in a weird year anyway, because they, for one season, have 14 teams. They haven't gotten their bowl stock, or whatever you want to call it, the number of bowls they have deals with up yet to really meet that. So like the bottom feeder teams of the Big 12 going to bowls, which is what UCF is, are just kind of going to be thrown in wherever ESPN wants them. So like I have no understanding of where UCF can end up. I feel like it can pretty much be anywhere. If my money was on it, I'd say Cure or Gasparilla. I'm actually going to be, or Shreveport. I pray to God, but I'm going to like
Shreveport. Yeah,
I'm going. Bailey's not on the podcast. He can't defend himself. Bailey has agreed to go to Shreveport.
He did agree.
Wrong. You can't prove me
wrong. I was there. I heard it.
Yeah, Brian heard it too. The two people are now saying it. That makes it true. Bailey has agreed to go to Shreveport, but it's one of those things where Splash Kingdom. Yeah, I'm absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's like 2 slides, but I'm absolutely going to Splash Kingdom. I'm going to check out their IMAX theater, which was the #1 attraction they listed on their tourism.
We don't have those in Florida.
We do not have any IMAX theaters in Florida. There's nothing to do here. All there is to go to like the beach or downtown or to any of the tourist attractions. There's nothing to do here. Terrible place to live. Rather be in Louisiana. But
the other one that I saw floating around out there is the First Responders Bowl
in Dallas.
That's potential, yeah.
I saw one that was UCF USF in Dallas, which I think would maybe be the dumbest thing of all time.
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense.
I mean, it's college football. Like I could see them doing it, and I'll be there, but I'd just be really upset about that, to be honest.
If you're going to play 2 Florida teams, you should have them in Florida.
Especially,
let's not be silly about this.
It's not like they're like, oh man, yeah, it's like we can't put them in the state that leads a number of bowls in state. Like there's just nowhere for them to go there. I'll have to send them to Texas. But that's my other take for why I kind of want it to be USF though, is I mean, bowls, how much they matter season in and season out just kind of depends on the opponent at this point. Like, I don't think any UCF fans really cared about that Duke game last year, right? In the Military Bowl. And that's why, like, when UCF lost, it wasn't even like the normal sting of a loss. Everyone was just kind of like, okay. And then you move on with the season. And if UCF gets some random game like that, where it's like, I don't know, like Independence Bowl versus Coastal Carolina was one that I saw 2 weeks ago that Bailey mentioned on the pod. It's like, does anyone care about that? Is there any hype or interest at all?
The only thing that concerns me is winding up with a Boca Bowl situation where we just get blown out by like a BYU or something like that. And you don't have that momentum going into the offseason, right?
Yeah.
So I would prefer us to find an opponent that we're comfortably going to win against. Let's get those extra bowl practices in, maybe get some younger guys, some reps, but there's potentially going to be some guys sitting out and not playing in the bowl game. Let's go out. Let's get a win. Let's end up 7-5 on this, or 7-6 on the season, excuse me, and carry that momentum into 2024 because we're going to need it.
And I will say that I've flipped on it because I in past years was 100%, especially when they were still in the AAC. Same thing of like I just want the easiest opponent possible. Like I remember back in 2019, they got Gasparilla versus Marshall. Everyone was like, "We want a Power 5 opponent." I'm like, "Hell yeah, go beat up on Marshall and get a top 25 season." Like, let's do it. But I don't know. It's interesting. I'm actually kind of just. It's kind of cool to be sitting here and being able to have this conversation because as recently as 2-3 weeks ago, I did not think they were going to a bowl. I think after that West Virginia loss, which that was the 5th straight one, it just kind of felt like they're never getting out of this. There's no way they're finishing 3-1, and they're here. They did it. They're actually going to a bowl game,
which is where we expected to be all year long, right?
Well, they should be in the Big 12 title game, and frankly, fire the staff because they're not.
Plays when we could have.
Oh, that's nothing to know. Gus was for the first time. Gus was asked about other jobs in his in the post-game press conference, which has not happened before, and he gave the most typical coach answer possible. He was like, "Oh, I'm going to be here. The future of this place is so great." Blah blah blah. So we learned nothing there, but we're out. It would have been really funny if he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to Mississippi State." Like just announced it in the press conference. Like, so I'll see y'all later. But we said on past podcasts, and I know things have changed a bit since then. But UCF, knocking on wood, should be good for this year with the coaching changes. Mississippi State was the only real opening that would be interested in Gus.
I don't see him going to Mississippi State. If he's going to go back to the SEC, he's going to wait for an Arkansas to 100%. Right? That is the only spot that you could realistically see him going back to. Does he really want to go back to the SEC to deal with the pressure cooker that he had, like he did when he was at Auburn? The only way I could see him doing that is if that Arkansas job opened up and he decided he wanted to go back to Arkansas.
Yeah. And that's why when those rumors were out there, which Arkansas has since said they are not firing Sam Pittman, but when those rumors were out there, and we talked about it on the pod, I was worried because I'm not worried about Mississippi State or whatever. No offense to Mississippi State, but that one's worrying. But we're done for this year. We don't have to worry about it. We can get this awesome recruiting class in, and we can deal about it. We can deal with all that next year. But I don't know. I'm trying to think as far as opt-outs for this bowl. It would just be wild speculation to name anyone at this point, so I don't really want to. But I feel like off the top of my head, I feel like Traymon might be one who we're probably not going to see in the bowl game. I think a
lot of it depends on the bowl that we're in and who we're playing, right?
Yeah.
If we're playing a no-name G5 school that's not South Florida, I could see more opt-outs taking place than you would expect if we were playing there, perhaps the Cows.
Right.
So yeah, Traymon, RJ Harvey potentially if he's going to plan to try and
my heart would shatter.
I know. But if he's serious about trying to see what his draft stock is and prepare for the draft, I would not be surprised if he sat out. We'd get probably a heavy dose of maybe Johnny Richardson or some of the younger backs, perhaps even Johnny Richardson. I don't know.
Which the other factor here is the portal opens at the end of next weekend. I think December 4th or December 4th, Monday is the day the portal opens. So there will also be, we may be talking about some guys we maybe not be talking about some guys right now that are going to be in the portal that are surprises that we'll then have to adjust for in the bowl as well. But it'll be interesting.
It's the most wonderful time of year.
It is what's more fun than players unexpectedly leaving your team? I think it's just great. Or unexpectedly gaining. Oh, that's another thing I need to bring up really quickly, and then we can get out of here. Quick update: Malachi Singleton. Have you followed this whole thing on Twitter last?
I have been following this on Twitter. So somebody had posted. They were commenting about why Malachi Singleton was on the bench in the game yesterday. And I had commented back to the post saying that, South Florida has, or not South Florida, Central Florida has lovely palm trees and sunshine this time of year. And Malachi Singleton's mom replied to the post and said, absolutely, yes, they do.
Interesting.
What?
It's interesting. She
Read
went
into
on
that all you want.
A rant. I mean, she sent like 10 tweets last night mentioning Gus in a couple of them flat out, saying Gus Malzahn doesn't lie and he knows talent. And so if you're wondering who UCF's quarterback of the future is, it might be Malachi Singleton, who, if you don't know the name, he was a 4-star in last year's class that UCF went after hard, and he ended up at Arkansas. Why he ended up at Arkansas, there's varying rumors and whatnot out there. Some people blame NIL. I don't want to just blanket blame NIL every time UCF doesn't get a recruit, but it is the SEC. But
it's an SEC school. I mean, you can't.
It's Gus's future job. I mean, come on, they got a lot of money, but Malachi
Singleton going to stay there, and Gus is going to transfer to Arkansas.
Would that be honestly, like, even though I absolutely know he could take the job in a year, I will be making many jokes on Twitter if UCF takes Arkansas's quarterback of the future in the portal of, wow, in 2 months you went from you're taking our coach to we took your quarterback. So congrats on that. But yeah, go ahead.
Would you make that trade?
What, trade Gus for Malachi Singleton?
Yeah.
No. I would not. We don't know anything about Malachi Singleton. He could come in and be terrible. I feel like I'd be a moron if I made that shit. I've said what I have to say on the Gus stuff. I know that everyone's not happy, and I'm not saying there are not problems, because golly gee, there sure are. But I think I'm more in love with this recruiting class they have right now than Gus. I mean, 9 4-stars committed in this class. Eddie Pierre-Louis is still kind of hovering out there, waiting to see what he's going to do. Kylan Fox, that's a big one. I also got to mention that, as Kylan Fox was supposed to be at the Iron Bowl today and came to UCF instead. That was very unexpected.
Yeah, that's a big thing we didn't touch on, is that they had a lot of recruits on hand to watch this game and watch UCF get, that bowl eligibility. So that was big.
Yeah.
And I saw that you had posted some pictures about the crowd. How did the crowd look from the press box? It was tough to see on Twitter.
Yeah, so I'll flat out say on the podcast, and I will tweet it. Like, I very heavily, I very intentionally did not show the north end zone in my photos because there were not people in it. But other than that, the stadium kind of filled out, to be honest. Like, at kickoff, I was thinking it looked pretty bad. But other than is it the north end zone? Am I saying the right one, or is that the south end zone?
That is the far north. One. The north end zone is the one that's the two sides. With
the two. Yeah, that one was obviously totally empty, which is just kind of like, I feel like even if this had been a night game, it might have been different, because I think a lot of students are getting back in town today, and just a noon game isn't really going to happen. But other than that, it kind of filled out. I think if I'm them, I would, because they can lie, I would probably announce like 38, 39,000 and call it a day. So it wasn't terrible.
Announced attendance, according to Trace Trelko, was a little over 43,000.
Okay, well, they're lying. That's
right.
bad.
I mean, that's tickets sold, I guess, or
They seriously announced 40. What are we doing, guys? Okay. Well, no, there were not 43,000 people at the game, but it was still it was nothing like the 2016 era crowds where people weren't showing up. It was a good crowd. It was loud at times. So yeah, it was a good crowd.
What are your thoughts on our Pegasus blackout uniforms?
I almost
we
forgot.
would be remiss
I'm
if we didn't
so
get
happy. I literally almost
Simmons
forgot.
detail of uniforms.
Man, can you believe it's been 2 years since they did a blackout the Pegasus uniforms? It was USF in 2021. Yeah, it was the debut with the Nighthead logo on the helmet.
We're going to see less and less of it with night mode now, though.
I don't know if we are. It's interesting because so night mode was worn 2 times this year. Do I have that right? It was worn against Kent State and was worn against Baylor. And then they wore light mode twice as well. They wore that against Kansas and they wore it against Cincinnati. I'm fine with that, but I think that's the limit for me because I think they're very cool. I think both of them, night mode in particular, are the flashiest uniforms UCF has ever worn. They're less traditional and more very in your face, that popping off the jerseys, reflective gold, and the Nighthead on the sleeves and they always match the decals to it. It's that all black and gold decal. Yeah, it's not like the one they wore today where it's got the black and gold in there and the white stroke and everything. And the fully detailed logo is just very strictly black. I mean, there's no white anywhere on the night mode uniform. It's all black and gold. It's very flashy. It's very cool. But to me, it feels more like an alternate than what I want to see their identity be, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I think that the night mode and the light mode uniform should be 1 to 2 times max, right? I want to see us, if we're going for a blackout, like today's uniform was perfect, right? We had the blackout, but it was the Pegasus. It was the traditional standard jersey set that we see that UCF plays with. So unless it's a special game where we're going to roll out, the night mode or the light mode uniform set once. Actually, I guess one of the times that they wore light mode, it was just the jersey. It wasn't the full white jersey, white pants. They threw it in there with, was it black pants?
Yep, it was black pants and it was gold helmets with the strip knights on the side against Cincinnati.
And as good as that looked, I would caution us from doing that too often during the season.
Yeah, I think what they did this year is my max, 2 of each, and stick with the rest. Because I did
game on top of it. I mean, that's
and the
5
space
games.
Game. Yeah, that's 5 of 12 games. Suddenly, you're not wearing your 2 standard uniforms. And I didn't think I really realized that because don't get me wrong, the night mode stuff looks great. The combo against Kent State, the new gold helmets that match the night mode numbers and those helmets with night mode jerseys and black pants looks freaking awesome. I love that. I want to see that again, but the black Pegasus jersey in particular, even more than the road version, that just feels like UCF to me. That jersey is UCF. And I don't even think I realized how much I missed a blackout with that uniform until I saw it today, because god damn, it looked good.
What are your thoughts on the helmet having different logos on opposite sides?
I was about to ask you this next, so I'm glad that we're
I don't like
in this area. Okay, so I go back and forth on it because they did it. They actually, the one version you really noticed it on this year was they did one version of the script nights where it was on both sides. And then they did one version where it was UCF on one side and the script nights on the other. I realized with that version, I like the script nights just being on one side because the script nights isn't always clear on TV. If you're not getting a close shot what it says. And I also kind of like that whenever you have 2 players facing each other, it literally says UCF Knights across their helmets. So I like that.
So they posted a picture of that on social media where it was the Nighthead on one side and the stack, because they were facing each other. So you had the stack and you had the Nighthead, and that was a really cool picture. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a CPA. I need to have symmetry in my life. So from a balance perspective, I don't like when they go different sides of the helmet. Some people love it. It's just, if I'm making the helmets, it's going to be the same logo on both sides.
So I got to say, because that reminded me of it when you said that you're a symmetry person. So I read your on Sons of UCF, your space uniform ranking.
I know what you're going to ask.
And hold on, because I'm kind of with you on part of it, but you had the moon helmet combo from 2019 quite low. And you said it was the symmetry of having the black on one side and the gray on the other.
So I ranked the 2019 space game. What Christian is referring to is I had gone back and just done a quick look back and given my personal rankings on all the space uniforms of 1 through 7, because this was mission 7 this year. And I believe I had the 2019 space game ranked in the top 3, but it was number 3. And for those of you that can't picture it off the top of your head because you're a terrible fan and you don't know uniforms like me and Christian do, that was the all white with the rocket logo pants and the moon helmet. And the moon helmet was fantastic. However, it was not symmetrical. They tried to do too much with it from my From my perspective, they tried to make it near side and far side of the moon, or light side and dark side of the moon, if you will. And if you're looking at the helmet from the front or the back, it looks off balance to me. Now, if they had just gone with an all, symmetrical light side color moon, I think that's the top helmet you've ever seen UCF wear. My other gripe with it is on the dark side of the moon, you can't even see the UCF stack. It's just a darkish looking helmet from one side. It's not symmetrical, and I know that's a hot take, and Christian is probably rolling his eyes right now. He's fuming because that's his favorite helmet. But sorry.
Well, first off, let me say I think it's cool that we invite you on for one episode and you've blown all of our hot takes out the water. Like, this is just like next level.
That's what I'm here for.
I appreciate. It's actually making like me look better from all the crazy things I've said. Like I'm just like say crazy stuff, and I'll just be like interesting. But no. So what's interesting about that is that I like the 2019 space uniforms a lot less than the general fan base does, but for completely different reasons than you do. Because I love that. I love the helmet. I think it's awesome. I thought the light and dark side, it worked for me. I understand if you're not a symmetry person, it doesn't, because there is like a fine divide of people in the world, especially even just with decals, of whether you want them to be the same or they can be different. And when you're talking about the whole freaking color of the helmet, I think you're going to alienate the people who feel that way.
Yeah.
But my issue with the 2019 space uniforms was that, which, like, for the record, we're nitpicking as hell here. They're all amazing.
Oh, sure.
The space uniforms
Absolutely.
are crazy. But I thought they were the weakest jersey and pants that we've seen through all of them. Not counting the first one that obviously just had decals, because the jersey to me was largely just a rehash of what we just saw in 2018. It was the same general design. They just flipped it from black to white, and they changed the color, of the numbers from reflective to just black. And this
the numbers, but the numbers had the Pegasus constellation inside the numbers, which I think is
very
pretty
cool.
Fantastic. That gives it extra points.
Again, they're all great. I'm not sitting here and saying it's a bad jersey. It was fantastic. I will say the one thing I hate about those uniforms is the only space uniform thing I've ever really hated. I hate the red and black USA on the pants to mimic the other.
No, that's my favorite part of
I hate it.
uniform.
It's you have this whole uniform that's all white and black and blue and gray all the way through, and then randomly it's like red at the bottom, and it just feels wildly out of place to me. I don't know, but I've posted that take on Twitter, and people have like threatened my life, so I know I'm wrong. Like clearly,
they should have perhaps saved those pants for perhaps the Discovery Mission 5 uniforms, where they were all white with the Discovery uniforms,
right? And they had some red in there on the patch and everything.
That would have been a good one to roll those out for instead, but.
Yeah, but really,
I completely understand your take on that.
But really, all these space uniforms are nothing compared to USF's gray and slime green thing they're wearing this weekend. So
I mean, kudos to them for using less slime, I guess, perhaps.
Lower on the slime for sure.
That's the bonus, right, for them. But they decided that UCF dropped pewter from its color scheme, and they decided, hey, we can pick this ball up and run with it.
And boy, did they do it. But
yeah, they did.
Shout out to USF for trying. That's always great for them. But well, I think we pretty much covered everything. This was some good uniform talk. You're more passionate about this than Bailey is. I love that. Maybe we'll just make this permanent so we can just talk about uniforms the entire podcast.
I will talk uniforms all day long.
Bailey, I know you're listening, and I'm lying. It's not true. Love you. But thank you so much, Brian, for joining us and subbing in for Bailey. I had a ton of fun. UCF is going bowling. We're excited.
We're going bowling. I can't wait to see. Are we expecting a week or so before we figure out where we're going?
Sometimes it starts leaking out a little earlier, so we'll see. We might have some ideas in the coming days, but time will tell, because conference championship weekend does need to sort itself out. But I personally cannot wait to travel to Texas to see them take on USF. It's gonna be great.
First Responders Bowl. Let's go.
Very excited. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Bailey and I will be back with a podcast this week where we're going to talk about the Bowl, presumably. We're going to finally touch on this Kingdom stuff, since that's been a whole thing. And it will be a lot of fun. So we will talk to you guys later.